This is a video that I've been wanting to do for a while, so I'm excited to finally show you how to take reality capture data and then review it on a wireless MetaQuest headset with the Resolve application. I'll guide you through taking a point cloud file that is an Autodesk Recap and then getting that data into a format that we can then review with the MetaQuest and the Resolve app. And along the way, I'll also give you tips for how to do this in other software that's not Recap. The general workflow is going to look very similar. You can basically teleport anyone from around the world to your site without them needing to travel or take an airplane. You bring the site to them rather than them having to go out to the site, and then you can walk through it together, answer questions, look for potential issues, overlay BIM data on top of it, all without ever leaving the comfort of your desk. And remember, with Resolve's Wellington engine, it doesn't matter how big the file is. It doesn't matter if you mix reality capture data with a massive BIM file so that you have site context or information of what's already out in the field. We're going to get that all onto the MetaQuest 3 with no cables, no tether to a massive computer. Everything happens on here with the magic of Resolve technology. So let's jump into it. I have Autodesk Recap Pro open, and I've loaded up the Recap sample project. If we zoom in here, you can see it's a scan of a machine shop, and all the equipment has been scanned in. That means someone went out to this physical location and with a laser scanner captured the machine shop and then saved it to a file format that we have loaded up into Recap. These file formats are going to be point cloud data. So you probably have VDC teams out in the field capturing data, either to get data for what exists and changes that you might be making, or to capture your progress and be able to share that with teams that are not physically co-present at the site. So what we're going to do is take this data and bring it into virtual reality. The first step is to convert it into a mesh. If I zoom in, you can see that everything on the screen is made up of a bunch of little points. Now, rendering point cloud is a difficult problem, especially on a wireless headset like the Quest, but rest assured, it's something that we're thinking about. But for now, we have added new functionality so that you can bring in textured meshes. So step one is to figure out how to take the point cloud file in Recap and convert it to a mesh that we can then load up in Resolve. So you're going to head over to the menu on the left and hover over the cloud icon. And then you can see there's this mesh menu. With Recap, the mesh processing happens on the cloud. That's why it's under the cloud submenu. Other softwares like Cintu and Preview 3D have similar functionality to convert the point clouds into meshes. Some do it on the cloud, some do it locally. In this case, it's on the cloud. You can see I've made one before, so it's already created, but I'm going to show you what you would do if you were starting from scratch. You can see there's a short description here of what scan to mesh does. It's pretty true to the name. It turns your scan into a mesh. Let's click the start button. And now we get a menu with a couple of options. First, just name your project, where you want to save it. One thing I glossed over is to run this functionality, you do need to have the Autodesk desktop connector installed, and you have to be logged in, and it has to be running. If it's not running, you'll get a pop-up that says you need to install it and run it, and it does this health check pretty much before starting because it needs to process this on the cloud, so it needs to be associated with your Autodesk account. I've named it, I've set a location for it on my cloud drive, and now I've got a couple of options for quality. I'm going to choose high, medium, or low. As it turns the points into a mesh, you will have a degradation in quality depending on which one you choose here. Of course, high means it'll take longer, medium faster, low the fastest. So you choose, you experiment and see what works best for you. You do want to make sure that generate texture is selected because the texture is a very important part that we need. Otherwise, you will just get a gray scan, and it'll look like the rough shapes in your scan, but it'll be gray and you'll be missing a lot of detail. So you definitely want those textures. Next, we want to select the formats. There's OBJ, RCM, and NWC. The OBJ is going to output an OBJ, which is a 3D file type, along with an MTL, which is a material file, and all the texture data in a zip folder. This is one way to export mesh formats. However, it's very bloated, it's very big, and in my personal experience, not very reliable. My favorite here is going to be the NWC because I can then bring that into my Navisworks project and then combine it with BIM data. So if you have a Revit file of this machine shop and perhaps some remodeling that you're going to do to it, you can overlay the scan on that model, bring it into Resolve, and toggle the reality data on and off, or the BIM data on and off, and basically do augmented reality, but in virtual reality, if that makes sense. It also tells you how long it's going to take. On busier days, it might take longer. And of course, the bigger the file, the longer it will take. And the higher the detail, the longer it will take. Now is a good time for me to tell you that it's going to take you a while if you're trying to process an entire campus of buildings. So really with the scan to mesh, the way I would recommend going about it is using the built-in recap tools to section off the bit of data that matters to you, and then just processing that and importing it. You can import multiple point clouds as NWCs into your Navis file, but if you really, really need a highly detailed mesh, it's going to take you a while. Alternatively, if you just have terrain data, that stuff can be relatively quick to process. It's when you have lots of detail, lots of buildings that you've captured, that can take a while. So just be cognizant of what you're processing. Once you're happy with your choices here, you're going to press submit, and that will send a job to the cloud. Locally, you'll get a notification when it's done via the Autodesk desktop connector, or I believe you also get an email once it's complete. If you're using software besides Recap, the file formats that are available to you might look a little different. They're not all able to export Navisworks files, but generally in OBJ, if you're going to export that, again, make sure you have all the other supplementary files like the MTL and the textures, and then put that into a zip. FBX is another great format because that's actually going to have the textures embedded into the file, so you don't have to worry about managing a bunch of files, making sure everything's correctly named. FBX is pretty good for scans. It's just going to be large. Preference, I would say, for what you upload into Resolve would be some sort of NWD based project, then an FBX, and then really if you have to an OBJ. If you do end up with an OBJ, feel free to reach out to our team and we can walk you through how to upload and making sure that you have all the correct data. Once your files finish processing, they'll be output to the Autodesk Drive or folder that you chose via the Autodesk desktop connector. In my case, I just put it under the My Data and My Sample Project. And you can see it gave me everything that I asked for with the checkboxes. I have an NWC, I have a zip file of the OBJ with all the contents that I told you about, and an RCM file. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the NWC, but the workflow is very similar regardless of the data that you have. The OBJ might be the one exception. The next part of this video will be on how to bring the scan data that we just exported into Navisworks so that you can federate it with other BIM files that you might have. If you were just uploading the scan and that's all you wanted to see, you can skip this step. I just like bringing it into Navisworks to first double check it. If you had an FBX or an OBJ output by the software you're using, then you can just skip to the later part of this video. Now I've got Navisworks open. I've got a blank project here, but maybe you already have an existing project with different discipline models in here. I just want to show you how to get the data in. So we go to the project button and then we hit append, and then I'm going to go to my drive, my Autodesk drive, which is this icon here, and then my data and my recap sample project. Nothing is showing up, and that's because the file type it's looking for is NWD. But if I change to the NWC, which is what was output, then I can select it. I'll press open, and now it's importing the data. All right, now my scan mesh is imported into Navisworks, and if I start to zoom in, you're going to notice it looks a little bit different. The holes between all the points are no longer there. So what happened here is instead of a bunch of points, the cloud process basically filled in the gap between all the points as best as it could, and it basically extrapolated what goes between the points. And so now if I look inside here, you can see I've lost a little bit of resolution, perhaps because I chose the medium quality, but generally this is more or less what I was looking for. And if I'm just trying to do a overview of, let's say, terrain, or what big structures might be in the way in the event of a retrofit, this is more than enough data. I have my scan mesh in Navisworks now, and the reason I brought it into Navisworks is because I want to combine it with BIM data that I have, be it other disciplines or perhaps equipment that I'm trying to fit into a room. So I want to show you a quick example of that. I have here part of the Resolve Robot Factory, and I'm going to unhide it. And now I have the robot arm, a CAD file of a robot arm, inside my scan. And I'm trying to figure out, do I have room in my machine shop for one of these robot arms that I really want to order? So what I'm going to do next is take this file that we've created here and save it as an NWD with the two files, the NWC scan and the NWD robot arm, and then bring it into VR where I can review and pull in some of my colleagues who run the machine shop with me to see if we can make this work. We go to Save As, and now we're going to name it. This will be called, I'll call this Recap Resolve Sample. And then I want to save it as an NWD. This is really important. The NWD is the format that we need on the Resolve side. So let's hit save. And now I have an NWD file with my scan mesh that I exported from Recap and this robot arm. Okay, now I am in the model that I just processed out of Recap. And you can see as I look around, I am in the machine shop now. It is a meshed version of the point cloud that we were just looking at. Now, there's a couple of things that you might notice right off the bat that I will teach you how to rectify once you're in Resolve. The first is you might be seeing all these little jagged lines all over the place. Those are just the boundaries that Resolve draws so that when you have equipment from BIM files, you get nice definition on your objects. In this case, there are a lot of seams between the basically fragments of this mesh. So if you go to the content menu and then settings, you can go to the general tab and turn off the show outlines setting. Aha, that looks a lot better. And I would also recommend that you turn on enable double-sided rendering. Now, if there are any single-sided faces, we will see both sides. And that happens to be common with these types of meshes that are not built via BIM or any sort of modeling tool. When they're generated, a lot of faces are what's called single-sided. And so that means when you fly on the other side, you won't see anything, but you just toggle that on, and now it's looking a lot better. And I'm going to walk around a bit here. All in all, I'd say for the medium quality, which took about 20 minutes to process, this is pretty good. One thing you might be wondering about this scan or any scan in general is why are there so many holes in the model? Why are there these blob looking meshes and then holes where I can see the outside everywhere else? And the reality is this just comes down to your reality capture method and how detailed you are with it. In this scenario, what happened is somebody probably walked around with some sort of laser scanner or maybe put it in one part of the room. And you have to understand there are parts of the room that were not visible to it. You could, in theory, fill it in with random material, but it would be taking a guess at best at what belongs there. And so basically, any holes you see in the model, those are blind spots for your reality capture tool, whether that's a standing laser scanner on a robot dog, a drone, anything that you are doing to capture. If you are not getting into every nook and cranny, you are going to wind up with some blind spots. And it all boils down to your use case and what detail you need. In this case, I have the dimensions of the room, which for assessing if I can fit a robot arm in here, it's good enough. So let's talk about how to now look at my BIM data overlaid on my reality capture data. I'm going to head over to this end of the room and turn around here. Okay, I've got a big hole here. And I was saying earlier, I'm, pretending to be the owner of this machine shop. And I really want to know, can I fit a robot arm in this machine shop? So if I go to my menu and then go to my content menu and go to layers, I've got the Resolve Robot Factory NWD layer off. So right now I'm just looking at the scan that I brought in. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. Aha. Now there is a 3D model of a robot arm in my 3D scan. And so this is the power of 3D scan data, is you can do this pseudo augmented reality where I've visited this machine shop that I'm not physically present at. I have the rough dimensions, and now I've placed a robot arm in there, and I'm trying to figure out, do I have the room to fit this robot arm? Right now, it's looking like the answer is no. I don't think I can make it work. Maybe if I move some equipment around, we can make it work. But as it stands, looks like it would be a tight fit. But I get a pretty good sense here of what I'm working with. This is a pretty crude example of how you might use reality capture data. It's more than likely what you'll be doing is overlaying perhaps prefabricated skids on a scan of a room that's already been built out. Or maybe ductwork that you are wanting to move around. Or like I said, maybe it's just a scan of progress and you are trying to figure out how that progress aligns with your BIM file. In this case, the robot arm would be what I modeled and the scan would be what we actually built on site. And we can maybe go in and compare, maybe have a superintendent walk through and tell me, hey, look, this is what we ended up having to do in the field to adapt here. This is how we modeled it. And that's a great way to QA QC your as-builts. Remember, Resolve also has a dollhouse mode where you can go in and look at the file from a top-down view. So here I've brought the model into the dollhouse environment. I'm zooming in and out of different things. This is a different way of looking at the model. This is a great way to do a site overview, review with your team, perhaps the plan for the day, or if you had a scan of your site which is in progress, it's also a great way to go in and perhaps talk about the things that are coming up this week and potential risks that you might encounter out on the field. And you'd all gather around the table talking about certain areas, and everybody has context for what they're looking at because they're out working on the site. I can also bring back the robot arm and look at it in the context of the machine shop here. Now you've seen how you can take a reality capture file that was a point cloud, turn it into a mesh, and then bring that textured mesh into Resolve so that you can then review it in the Quest with your colleagues or even just alone, going through and assessing either just reality capture data or reality capture data combined with BIM data. That's all for now. Leave any questions or comments down below. And if you haven't tried Resolve, but you want to, then download it from the Quest store. It's available on the App Store. You can download it today and then head to our website to request a trial so that you can test out the workflow that I showed in this video. Thanks for watching, and let us know what other content you'd like to see next.